Hello and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly video recap from Reboot Illinois. I'm Madeleine Doubek here with Matt Dietrich, and we have a huge breaking news story on the eve of the 4th of July we want to tell you about today. The Illinois Supreme Court issued a ruling this morning about a case that deals with whether retirees have to pay for their own health care, in a nutshell, and so this is an important case as it relates to Senate Bill 1, the pension reform law that is being challenged. Currently it's still in Sangamon County Circuit Court, but essentially in a 6-1 decision, our state Supreme Court has ruled that health care benefits are considered a pension benefit and must be covered by the state of Illinois, meaning all of us. And so a lot of people are kind of wondering if this means that changes to the major pension system are doomed.
There were two things at issue in the case that was decided today. Number one, do health care benefits count as pension benefits,
right,
which the court by a 6-1 margin said yes they do. And number two, can they be reduced? And again they said absolutely not. They were relying on a pension protection clause that's in the Illinois state constitution that states pretty specifically that pension benefits, once they're agreed to,
cannot be diminished.
Right, cannot be diminished, which would not be a positive thing for those who support SB 1, which is going to end up in front of the same court probably sometime in 2015.
Right.
However, the case involving Senate Bill 1 is going to be a lot different than what this case was.
Right, so we talked, everyone's still trying to figure this out, but we did talk with State Representative Elaine Nekritz, who was one of the main forces in the House, a suburban Democrat pushing what became SB 1 ultimately, and she pointed out there's a couple of key differences in that this case, SB 1, has not been argued before the court yet. One of those is that SB 1 gives consideration. You want to explain what that concept means?
Consideration, it means basically if you're going to take something away, you have to give something back, and in the case of Senate Bill 1, employees will put in less out of each paycheck into their pension system in exchange for recalculation of the annual cost of living adjustment, raising some retirement ages, and putting caps on pensionable income. That was not present in the law that was the subject of the current, today's Supreme Court decision.
Right, so her point of view was let's let the case work its way through the courts and let that be argued. And the other thing that she mentioned was that we've written about extensively is there's a pretty significant preamble in SB 1 that makes the case that we're in a crisis, this is an emergency, and the legislature has broader powers to act when there isn't an emergency. Seems like this case sort of argues there isn't an emergency, so we'll see how that plays out. But it very clearly, the justices, the majority justices said at one point that we have concluded that the provision in the Constitution, me talking, not the justices, was, quote, aimed at protecting the right to receive the promised retirement benefits, not the adequacy of the funding to pay for them.
In other words, this decision says, it doesn't matter how bad a shape the state finances are, this is what the Constitution says. If that same standard is applied in the SB 1 case, then SB 1 would be out the window.
And there is no Plan B.
No.
And so if SB 1 is ultimately thrown out the window and there is no Plan B, seems to us like we have two options. One is that we're all going to be paying through higher taxes the $100 billion plus pension debt that we have in Illinois.
We have to make that up by 2045.
Or we rewrite the Constitution, which would require, I presume, a constitutional convention.
Well,
could the supermajority of the legislature do that?
It would take an amendment to they'd have to amend the Constitution to remove or revise the protection clause. To change the Constitution requires a supermajority of both the House and the Senate, and then it goes before the voters who would have to approve it. Do a majority of Illinois voters trust, or would they vote to allow the legislature to just slash pension benefits for public employees? That is a question, that's a $1 million question, I have no idea.
Or $1 billion.
Yeah,
Or 100 billion.
Yes.
All right, well, we'll see how this all shakes out. We'll be following it and covering it for you. In the meantime, we wish you a very happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day. We'll see you on the next edition of Only in Illinois.